So I'm actually a co-author of a college-level textbook on contemporary advertising. The name is Contemporary Advertising. It is literally a advertising 101, and I am literally in the throes of revising that right now, so which is actually my night job. As you heard, I am partner of Catalyst SF. We're what we call ourselves a marketing capital firm. I've been there for about 2.5 years, and we help young companies actually position themselves in the marketing and advertising arena, especially considering it is a very cluttered environment. We work primarily with ad technologies in that space. And as you can see here, there's another logo, and there's a big title there called President of MindTime. It's actually MindTime Technology. This is what I'm transitioning into right now, and I'm actually going to explain a little bit of MindTime in a couple of verbal case studies as I go through this. But really what MindTime does is actually commercializes a social science theory called MindTime, oddly enough, where it actually helps understand the drivers of consumer behavior. So, but that's what I'm doing now. So let's get into this topic. So a couple of months ago, I was asked to do this, and I thought, yeah, this would be fun. I mean, this is something we talk about and we debate about in advertising and marketing on a regular basis. You know, how can we leverage brand advocates, and how do we identify them? What can we learn from them, and how do we really mobilize them, so to speak? And so I started thinking about it for a long period of time because I had 2 months, right? And so I said, well, you know, I'm going to be on stage, I'm going to be doing a keynote. So obviously I want to do the best possible thing I could. I want to think about this. I want to actually come out here and give you guys something to think about. And so I started looking at stats and trends and really trying to make sure I was up to speed with everything that was going on in the social media brand advocacy realm, right? So what I came up with was, hey, guess what? We're in an age of enlightenment. We'll call that Enlightenment Part 2. You're a Hot Shot fan, Part 2. And if you look at the definition of what the Enlightenment period was, it actually oddly reminiscent of what we're in right now, right? I mean, we're questioning the traditional institutions, customs, and morals, and a strong belief in rationality and science. Publishing, I'm going through this right now. This is a big debate each and every year with my editors. I want to digitize it, and they want to stick to pages because they know how to monetize the pages. They don't know how to monetize it digitally. This is a big deal for them. Personal computing. I mean, how many people have tablets? And they're less than $1,000. I mean, this is a big deal. And then, of course, advertising and marketing. This is where we're going to focus today. But advertising and marketing, this is a big upheaval right now with how do we leverage social media? How do we think about social media and really just digital marketing on a whole? If you look at all the trends and all the numbers, people are migrating to the digital space, but the spends aren't coming over at the same rate. And I think that that's something that we all sort of think about on a regular basis. Why is that happening? What is it? Well, is it because we're that much more efficient? Well, I think it's more than that. But really, I started looking at this and I was like, well, it's actually 3 things that are leading us to this age of enlightenment. We have this technology revolution going on right now, especially in advertising and marketing. Every day there's a new company that is coming up with some new technology that allows you to do something that much better, that much more efficient. There's a data revolution. Eric Schmidt said we've produced more data in the last 5 years, from 2006 to now, than the entire history of the world before that. That's a lot of data. That's a lot of information that we're trying to go through. And then all of that actually leads to a transparency revolution. I mean, you talk about this last slide where I talk about all these different industries that are going under because of this enlightenment era. Well, the transparency revolution is really just sort of opening up the kimono to what is happening behind business. So people are coming out with new ways to do things cheaper, faster, and better. And that really just kills all of the traditional ways in which we view things. So all that leads to the age of enlightenment, Part 2. Right? Well, it's sort of, the silence is actually sort of what I felt inside too. It was like, okay, hold on. I had this whole deck and I thought, that really doesn't hit at anything that's really meaningful. What does it really mean to be a part of that age? I even actually went so far as to say, hey, guess what? It's the Enlightenment period. Right? Pay homage to the billions of people on Facebook, right? But it's more than that. And it left me empty inside. It didn't really get to the heart of the matter. What is it that we're in right now? What is it that we're experiencing that is so revolutionary? Well, before I get there, we have to think about what it is that we do on a regular basis. We have a tendency, all of us in this room, we have a tendency to really think about things as in aggregate numbers and trends, very impersonal, if you will. We look at not the individuals, but the collectives. And we look at what they're doing over time and how they act within their world, right? But we don't actually ever bring it down to the individual level. What does that do? Produce masses, right? Mass, there's no product differentiation in there, right? It is one size fits all. But if there's anything that we've learned in recent history, one size doesn't fit all. In fact, each and every one of us have our own desires, our own needs, and our own wants that are either met or unmet. And if they're met, then we're headed down a path of decision or of choice. If they're unmet, we're headed down the path of, I'll choose something else. So why in business do we take this mass approach when on an individual level, we all know that we make decisions not in a mass environment? I think this is where I started saying, that's different. I could think about that for a little bit. So what does that really mean? Well, it means that we're in a period where we have to start thinking about people, not businesses, not statistics, but the actual fundamental drivers of how people act in this world. They do have basic needs, they do have basic desires. What if we could understand that? Now I'm going to go into a little case study. So this is a Mind Time Technologies case study. We worked with a local Bay Area university not that long ago, and we studied the MBA students, and really what they were trying to assess was, are our MBA students actually getting any value out of their education? And so how we work is we actually ask 9 questions, or it's actually 9 statements, and how you respond to those 9 statements puts you into a bucket, and that bucket is based off 3 basic principles. All of us have 3 basic principles that we use to make our decisions: certainty, probability, and possibility. Now we've been studying this for about 13 years, and we've got all of the science to validate this, but the reality is those 3 things, those 3 elements, make up our decision-making process. What I mean by that is some of you rely on certainty, some of you rely on probability, and some of you rely on possibility or a mix of those. And through our 9 questions, we can understand that. So we asked these 9 questions to the MBA students. And then we asked a whole series of other questions. Obviously, the most important one, do you value the education you get? What do you think the results were? They're actually pretty good. 70% said, I value my education. Now, in our very impersonal world, 70% is a good number. 70% say, oh yes, I am getting value out of this. That's all right, you're doing a good job. Now, how do we get to 71? Now, when you benchmark, you could probably have some level of understanding of how you're trending. But when you do that the first time, 70 really means nothing to you. Was it 75 last year and now it's 70? Was it 65 last year and now it's 70? Which way are you trending? Which way are you heading? Usually we stop and we say, hey, we have 70% acceptance, let's keep going. Stay the course. Remember what that got us. Thank you, whoever's laughing. So the one thing we asked this university was, why don't you want to know about the 30%? Why aren't they saying that they like it? What's wrong with them? Or what's wrong with you? Well, it turns out that the 30% who didn't like it had a high intensity towards the certainty principle. They needed accuracy, they needed authority, they needed to make sure that what you were telling them was absolutely right. And when we looked at the teachers associated with this, they were actually much more possibility oriented. They wanted to talk about what it could be, how all these technologies can enhance our lives, not the business economics of the analytics and the factual based information that got us to where we are. And that fundamental principle of understanding the needs of those 30% helped just in articulating how that particular professor communicated to her audience. Now she brings in, what is it, I don't know, he or she brings in more fact-based analytical measures to move that number from 70% to 85 to 90%. Clearly never going to get 100. But as long as you understand what the drivers are, you can move that number. But if we look at mass trends and mass analysis, we miss those fundamental drivers. And let's remember, we as organizations are actually built on people. So when we look at the masses, we are actually doing our own self a disservice. Because what we've also found in our studies is that companies actually emit a sort of personality, if you will. Because the executives and the senior leadership of companies think a certain way. And what we call these three principal drivers is thinking styles. Make it easy for everybody. And we all emit a thinking style on our own. And companies do too. Why? Because they're made up of people. We all have our own perspective, and we emit that perspective on the world. And so what you end up seeing is that those brand advocates for certain companies are very closely aligned with the thinking styles of the executives and the senior managements of those brands. So when you think about it, people build businesses. They build houses, they build products, but we talk about it as entities, and we talk about it as very non-personal ways. We need to get out of that. One of the other aspects of this is people have relationships with other people. Brands are a set of people, or an entity, or a group of people who are trying to have a relationship with other people. If we start thinking about it in much more mass terms, you lose that connection. You miss out on the possibility of having those relationships. And relationships are what make things move. But how do you get relationships? Well, you have to have that understanding. You have to understand who you are, who the other person is. Some of our best relationships in life are based on the fact that we understand the needs and desires and wants of the other person on the other end. And guess what? When we fulfill them, they fulfill ours. And that to me, when I started thinking about it, I was like, you know what? This is what we're missing. This is what we need to be thinking about. How do we build connections with our customers, with our end users? Well, we have to understand them. And guess what? By understanding them, you're going to learn a little bit about yourself. Because if you start thinking about the brand advocates, we go back to what I was saying. A brand emits a personality and attracts people similarly to that personality. So guess what? If I can study my brand advocates, then I'm going to learn a lot about myself, aren't I? Because I'm talking to them. I'm projecting my perception of the world onto them, and it's resonating with them. They're like, yeah, you see the world like I do. That's why I want to be associated with you. Take a somewhat of a big company down here called Apple. Mm-hmm. They emit a probability and possibility personality. That's their thinking style. That's Jobs' thinking style. It's all about the design, the creativity of it, but in practical terms. And that resonates with a lot of people. We as a society are a much more hopeful, possibility-oriented society. So when a company talks about the possibilities of doing things with their products, a lot of us gravitate towards that. That sounds good. That sounds warm and fuzzy inside. And that's what we're seeing. But you can't do that without understanding basic needs. Why? Why is that important? Because this is what draws in love. We've all probably read the book Love Marks. That's what he's talking about. You're getting people at a fundamental level, and they're enjoying what you're producing for them. They're loving you. And when you love something, you will fight for them. Because when that thing that you love succeeds, a little part of you succeeds too. And I think that's what we're all trying to strive for when we talk about social media and brand advocacy, and trying to understand people and trying to get at this greater thing that moves business. It's right there. It's actually something we do every day with everybody outside of business. But the moment we walk in those doors, it's like, all right, shut off relationship time, it's business time. Apparently that all was it. So, all right, let's talk about business. Each and every business has its own, I guess, has its own set of needs, obviously. But at the fundamental level of what everybody's trying to do, we need people to try our stuff. We need people to continue to repeat, try our stuff. And then we want them to become advocates. And obviously it's a funnel, and at the top of the funnel is the most amount of people, at the bottom of the funnel is the least amount of people. So our basic job is to fill the funnel. We've talked about this many times, I'm sure, in many different ways. How do you fill that funnel if you don't know who the heck is at the bottom? Because the only way you're going to get those people down there is if you get them to try. And the only way you get them to try is if you understand who they are. And if you understand who they are, then they'll repeat because they'll resonate with you, and then they'll become advocates. And advocacy, as I think the video showed us, is a very powerful thing. We always seem to hide behind this idea that, well, you know, I don't have a bricks and mortar, or I don't really have a place where I can see my customers eye to eye, and blah, blah, blah. Listen, it is more important now and today that we connect with our consumers than ever before. Largely, we use this as an excuse rather than what it actually is an opportunity. We have the ability to connect with more people on a more regular basis than ever before. But we hide behind the fact that because it's not face-to-face, therefore it doesn't count the same. I don't agree with that. And I'm guessing a large portion of you guys are here because you don't agree with that too, right? And this is our opportunity to shine with our customers, understand, and have a reciprocal relationship with them. You must remember what relationship means. It's reciprocal. It's give and take. I give you something, I take something from you, you give me something, I take something from you. Basic tenets of a relationship. Okay, look at that. Basic tenets of a relationship. We've got to remember this. It is not about pushing your message. It's not about getting in front of people. It's not about exposing people. It's about building lasting relationships that move business. By building lasting relationships, you'll move business. Now, the hardest thing, and I think what most people get caught up in, especially on the business side of things, is that really truly getting down and understanding your consumers takes time. And you know what? You might fall flat. But that's actually part of relationships. How many times have we tried to talk to our significant others, whether they are your mother, your father, your daughter, your brother, your sister, and what you were trying to do in your best intentions, it came out and it didn't connect. And they yelled at you, they did whatever it was exactly opposite of how you thought it was going to be. You were like, oh, I'm really excited to talk about that. Oh, that didn't work. It happens to all of us. We can't be afraid to not expose ourselves, but when you have a real relationship, you're really actually empowering the other person to be able to speak on your behalf because they know that much about you. And if you're not empowering them to do that, then you're not giving them the full elements of your relationship, because we are going to falter. To err is human. Companies are built off of humans. We are going to falter. Everybody does. But if you empower your advocates, they'll get your back. They got you. They understand. They don't expect us to be perfect. They're not perfect. And if you are engaging with them on a one-to-one level, on an individual level, based off their needs, their assessment, their wants, their desires, they'll get your back. Guaranteed. Why? Because the number one reason that advocates do what they do is not for money, not for anything else. It is, because some of you might not be able to read this, it is important to me that the brand views me as a good advocate? It's important to me that my wife views me as a good husband. It's important to me that my sons view me as a good dad. It's the same thing. It's a give and take. Again, why is this important? Because brand advocates are 4 times more likely to share information about products, brands, sales, and stores. 2 times more likely to share via social media and e-commerce. But when you do compare people that say, I like this brand and I will stand up for that brand, it is not for anything more than I want to meet nice people. I like to receive free products. I like incentives for my communications. But where in there does it say, I want money? So anybody who's thinking about buying the brand advocacy army, forget it. It's not going to work. It's just not what it's about. You don't buy love. You create. And of course, you have to have this slide, right? And thank you to Zuberance for giving me this one. Recommendations from people known. I believe in the video it said 92%, so that must be updated, because 90% of people buy things based off recommendations from people known. Well, my brother said it was good. Number 2, consumers' opinions posted online. People I don't even know. That's 1 and 2 are based off people recommending these things to me. Both of those are brand advocates. I have a friend. It just doesn't make sense to me. He will buy nothing but Ford trucks. Ford trucks. He even tattooed it on his arm. He likes it. He loves it. He's a Ford truck man. And then the third one, and I think this is important too, because it says brand websites. It says 70%. The reason that's not higher is because I think if you take the last 30 years of what brands have been trying to do, there's a little bit of us that are like, yeah, that company's telling me something I don't know if I trust. But if you start engaging these people up here, getting them talking about you, getting them to love you, I guarantee you this number will move. Because they'll sense the trust, the honesty behind it, because you can't have a relationship without that. So, a couple more slides and then I'll turn it over to the panel. You have to give them a platform. A platform doesn't mean a technology platform. It doesn't mean that you tell them exactly how to say things. It means you are empowering them with the knowledge of you as an organization and how you are viewing the world that resonates with them. So when you falter, they got your back. Because again, they're sticking their neck out of the line for you. They're not doing it for any other reason but to see that you guys become successful, and if you become successful, they'll feel good about that. There's a brand that I love and is continuing to be successful. I told you so. Oh, this messed up. Oh, this was the tenets of a good relationship. I think the point of what I was trying to say here is you have to think about all these things around the circle, but clearly the most important one is this. It's respect. The moment you start calling your customers end users, you've lost that. Because they're not. They're people. I'm a brand advocate. You all are brand advocates. The number that was said in that video, 60 million brand advocates, I believe that is just people who say, I'm a brand advocate, but we all are brand advocates. Somebody's asked us along the lines, hey, should I buy an Acer or should I buy a Sony? And we probably said, well, buy a Mac, yeah, exactly. So we all are brand advocates. People trust us because they know us and they understand who we are and what we want. And we have to give that to those other people. So, or to our brand advocates, I mean. So, when you get down to the basic terms of what engagement really is, the rest is easy, right? Yeah, of course not. But it makes it easier, because what you're going to have is extensions of your own company out in space talking about you in a way that you feel comfortable with, because you have a relationship with them and you've told them what your needs and desires are because you've met their needs and their desires.